villager trading nerf, several nerfs to resin, and much more. Hello there, Ray here. We got a brand new snapshot for the Java edition. This is 24W44A, and this adds in all the resin as well as the eye blossoms into Java edition. Last week we seen it got added into the Bedrock beta, but when they added it here into Java, they did change some things, so we'll take a look at all of those. This also means that everything you see here is officially in the snapshots and it's no longer considered experimental, and we'll be seeing this in the next release of Minecraft being 1.21.4. So click that like button and let's get into it. I cover the basics of the eye blossoms in this video here, but they did make some slight changes when it comes to the Java edition, as when they now close, they'll put off some little particles going upwards. You can also see they react to the nearby blossoms much quicker than they did in Bedrock edition. As soon as one closed, they kind of all closed. And when they open them up, they also put off the little particles, but they're orange particles this time. And even though they appear to be glowing, now that we're in Java edition, we can actually check and see that they're not putting off any light whatsoever. Now they made it so that bees will actually follow you if you're holding these flowers, but if you interact with them, like you try to breed them with the flowers, it will give them poison. So you can't actually breed them using this. They also added this weird mechanic for the wither roses, so now when you have wither roses, it will also attract the bees, but if you actually try to breed them with it, it'll give them the wither effect. I think this is kind of cool when they have mechanics like this. They also did change it so that wandering traders will sell the open eye blossoms for emeralds. That could be another way you could obtain it without having to actually come to this biome. Now they also added in the resin for Java edition as well, which I also covered in my previous video how that all works, but I'll cover everything that is different for the Java edition. First up, they changed where the resin will actually spread to. Now the resin will only spread on top of pale oak logs and won't do other types of blocks. They also changed how fast the creaking will produce resin at its heart location. When before, as fast as you could attack it, it would produce resin. Now there is a 5-second cooldown. This drastically reduces the amount of resin you can produce, as every time one of the creakings get hit, you have to wait 5 seconds. This means you want to have a lot more creaking in order to produce a similar amount of resin as my previous farm that I showed. And I showed you don't actually need a player in order to actually obtain it, you can just have a piston push the block in order to break it off. But when it comes to the player obtaining it, you can just break it with your fist and it will instant mine. But if you store the clumps as a block, which can be converted back down into clumps, that's a great way to store tons of it. But the block itself, when placed down, can also be instant broke by the player with no tool, which makes it similar to stuff like TNT, slime, and honey blocks, which are great for temporary placing blocks, as you could place something down and then place a block off of them and then immediately remove them with a single click. They also make decent scaffolding blocks, except when it comes to honey you can't really jump on them and slime is really slow when moving on it. So I'd actually use a TNT block in order to scaffold upwards, but that is really dangerous when working with redstone. But with the new resin block, we can now easily instant mine it and stack upwards or put it on the side in order to build outwards. And it's so much better than using the actual scaffolding block, which is limited to how far you can reach sideways. And we don't have to have the slow properties of honey or slime or the scariness of using TNT. So I can definitely see people getting tons of this block in order to just build really quickly, and even if it happens to fall off to the side, but they can't obtain it again, they're still able to just farm tons of it so they can continue working on their projects really easily. But I'm excited to hear what you guys think about this cool property. Now if you smelt resin down into bricks and then use it to build resin bricks, these blocks don't instant mine, but instead you'll need to use the proper tool, which is a pickaxe. And in Java we can craft all the different types of resin bricks similar to Bedrock edition. And it seems that the range in which the resin can spread is shrunk in Java edition. In Bedrock edition it could go 3 blocks, in Java it's only going 2 blocks out. So I'll just have to tweak my farm slightly in order to make it work for Java as well. But in Java edition, it doesn't seem like the dogs that are tamed are actually causing the resin. Also notice a dog just stops attacking it after a little while for some reason. These might be bugs. And they also added so wandering traders will sell you the resin clumps, so you could actually get these like in a skyblock world, as you do need them in order to produce the creaking heart, which takes the logs plus the resin. And since the wandering traders also sell the pale oak saplings, you get everything you need in order to make these blocks, even in a restricted world. And they added it so wandering traders will sell the pale moss block as well as the pale hanging moss. So with a single block you can use it to make more of it, such as like in my moss farm. They also made a change to the non-generated pale oak trees, and that is they'll generate with none of the little extra pieces. So they won't generate with any vines, and they won't convert the ground into moss blocks like they were doing before, and also producing carpets. Instead they'll be completely kind of blank of decorations, and only the ones that generate as a feature will actually do this, where they have all these little extra decoration pieces. Now when it comes to the naturally generated freaking hearts, If you destroy them, they'll drop some XPs between 20 to 24, so they're kind of like a monster spawner, and that you're rewarded when you break them. They also will drop some resin clumps, 1 to 3, and fortune will actually increase the number of clumps. But if you break one that the player placed down, you're not going to get a bunch of XPs. One thing that's also new you can see is the particles that actually come off of the leaves. So if I just place in some of the new pale oak leaves, you can see the cool particles that come off of them. They're like little individual leaves of a tree falling downwards. I think this is extremely cool. Kind of reminds you of the particles that come off of the blossoms. Even though I'm not a builder, it's always cool to see blocks that can put off particles, but you just gotta keep in mind this does increase the particles around the player, which you can turn down in your settings, but the problem is there's some particles you can't turn down. I really wish there was an option where you could turn off particles completely, but luckily we can use data packs to completely remove particles, as it can drastically lower your FPS when there's tons of them. When the game was generating in the dark oak tree, it would sometimes offset its leaves to the side. This problem was also existing in the pale oak trees, so now you'll no longer find trees that look like this. Now this change doesn't apply to trees that are grown by the player, so it shouldn't affect how we collect leaves in order to get enough saplings to create an automatic pale oak tree farm. As you can see, I already have a design here, and I will be showing this one in the future, so guys, make sure you are still subscribed. Panorama and the main menu on Minecraft got updated to show the new Pale Gardens biome. They fixed a whole bunch of bugs related to the creaking and the new Pale Gardens, including now creaking's particles that show you where the actual hearts are will easily show up even if you have particles turned to minimal. Creakings will no longer spawn in small areas like this one here, which is constantly thinking it's getting damaged. And the creaking can now turn its head independent of its body, which is really scary. You'll no longer waste bone meal on the new pale carpet if there's not a nearby block for it to actually generate up onto. The hanging pale moss now works with their proper tool, so they will be instant mine. And it turns out the proper tool is pretty much any tool, but to get the items you do need to use either shears or you have to use a silk touch variation of some other tool. And I did cover how to build a simple farm right here. They didn't want the player to soft lock in an area with the creaking. They changed it so that if the player gets in a small area with the creaking will automatically die. This is because they don't want the player to get stuck in the same block as it and not be able to mine its way out, since you can't do any damage to it. Although you could just wait for daytime for it to despawn, or you could just turn the opposite direction and let it kill you. Of course, that's not really an option in hardcore mode, so you can no longer use the creaking as a way to trap the player, even if it was just during the nighttime. Now you can continue to use my trap here that I showed, where you can put a never-ending stream of armor stands into the player's location, therefore they can't get out, which is part of my dream SMP trap. Also, a whole bunch of other bugs related to the creaking, the new pale oak tree look, as well as the sounds in these biomes and with these things. They also change how some blocks will drop. Now typically when it comes to these harder types of blocks, you need a special tool in order to break them quickly. Or in some cases they wouldn't drop their items at all if you broke it with the wrong tool. But the way people were getting around this was just by breaking the supporting block, which would always drop the block on top. So instead, when it comes to these unique blocks that can break when their supporting block breaks, they will no longer need their supporting tool in order to break them into items that can be collected. So even though the bell takes a while to break, you can break it with your fist and still obtain it. This also applies to copper and iron doors, all the different types of pressure plates, as well as the bell and the lanterns. They also made changes to lecterns, so they will break and drop as an item, as well as when it comes to ender chests. Typically they will only drop obsidian if you actually break them using a higher tier pickaxe. Now they'll also drop obsidian if you just break them with your fist. Hey, look at that. The trick I showed where you can trade with villagers or wandering traders and then push them into unloaded chunks like through portals in order to continue to trade with them without them ever locking up has now been fixed. This means you will not be able to trade a single villager infinite amount of times, and instead will have to rely on having multiple villagers to reset, as they will naturally reset 2 times a day. When flying really fast, the player would flicker. This problem has now been fixed. But I wonder if this will actually stop the player from flickering when launching my player in this crazy machine I made, which will launch a player using the wind charge effect. Because typically when you get launched, your player also flickers, and also the thing you're riding flickers. They've been trying to fix several bugs related to arrows and tridents over the last few snapshots, including today, where they fixed it so that they will no longer get glitched out when they get launched. Blocks will once again turn snowy on top, when in the previous version they were accidentally just looking normal. Arrows will once again put off as much damage as before when they accidentally reduced it. When caves generate, they'll now be able to cut through the surfaces that have snow blocks instead of leaving them behind it like this. You now no longer have to rename your book in Ample in order for the title to show up when you're putting it in an item frame. Things you build below Y level -64 will now actually show up on the map when before they did not. Now if you're sprinting before performing an action such as like eating or crouching, you would have a slight speed boost compared to if you would do those actions and then try to sprint at the same time. So now this has been changed so that it'll be the same speed no matter if you're sprinting, eating, or start eating and then sprinting. It now made it easier to hit the dragon with melee from different angles using the sword. When before there'd be a desync between where the game thought the dragon was and where the player thought the dragon was. They fixed the problem when shooting a wind charge through lava, but it wasn't igniting the TNT minecart underneath. But now it will actually blow up. This snapshot also included a bunch of other bug fixes, most of them related to visuals, including being able to use commands to get blocks that are normally not possible in survival, such as like a snowy grass block with no snow on top of it. The data pack and resource pack also got updated to handle all these changes. And you can come watch me test out all these new features over at my Twitch live stream. I do this 4 times a week, and this server is only possible because of Bisect hosting. They let you have your very own Minecraft server so you can run all these cool features in there, including the snapshots, while having complete control over your own server. And you can get 25% off just by using code RAY or by using a link in the description. Thanks Bisect hosting for giving this lovely offer to all my viewers, and I will see you guys all over in my Twitch stream where I'll be designing some new farms. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye bye!